How's it going?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome on in. I'm very excited to be with you here once again. Energy's been up and down today, but we're hanging in there. We had some serious thunder and lightning. That is some scary stuff down here. And I'm not sure why that is. I'm sure it's just something to do with Florida. The other day, Andy and I were looking up why the sunsets are so beautiful over here, and it's basically just because of humidity and cloud placement, which I probably could have told you, but it seems like something of a cop out, but I mean, I guess it's the cause. There's not really any other explanation, but if you guys have ever seen Florida sunsets, they are just beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous, and I have never seen anything like them, including the high altitude sunsets we got in Colorado. So very happy to be here enjoying that. Also glad to be living in such a wonderfully well-governed and free state. I'm very glad for Governor DeSantis. Really truly appreciate his work down here, and I think that he has great things in the future, whatever happens with him. Oh, I want to talk about Ibram Kendi. I forgot about that. Yeah, okay, so we're gonna talk about Ibram Kendi because he's having fun right now. We got a few culture war things today. We're gonna start with some presidential politics. We're gonna talk about both presidents' criminal cases that they have upcoming. So Biden is staring down impeachment. I think that's coming up on Thursday. And Trump, of course, is looking at a couple different cases against him. It's pretty clear that they're politically motivated, but he did say recently that he took responsibility for talking about the 2020 election like he did, which was somewhat of a legal question, so we will look at that a little bit too. Alan Dershowitz says that's not a big deal, and we'll see why he thinks that. He's a lawyer and has been for a very long time, but we'll see what they have to say over there. All right, let's dive into it. We'll just open up with, you know what, let's open with good news, because I like good news. Let me see where it is. Yeah, okay. Moment hundreds of Pennsylvania high school students walk out after school board says transgender students must be allowed to use whichever bathroom they choose. So I thought this was great because the kids are being very brave. I know that it's hard to do. However, it sounds like they have a whole bunch of them who are in agreement about this. And I just think that's fantastic. It feels to me like the tide's starting to turn a little bit. And let's see what they have to say. Students at Perkiomen, I'm going to call it that. I'm not sure how it's actually pronounced. Valley District protested the decision last week. School board was accused of compromising students' rights. Yes. Superintendent Barbara Russell defended the choice as, quote, anti-discriminatory. Hundreds of students in Pennsylvania walked out of school in protest over a new rule allowing transgender students to use the bathroom of their choice. So, as always, prioritizing the rights, feelings, and thoughts of transgender students over the rights of non-transgender students, basically. And it's par for the course. I feel like they are, well, I just got to pause that because that's crazy. I don't really want that. Because for whatever reason, this is how the cookie crumbles. This is the hierarchy. It's the most important thing to them. The only thing that matters is making trans people feel included. I'm not sure where this ends, but I don't think it's going to end well. High school students in the district staged the protest after officials opted not to adopt a policy that would force students to use restrooms correspondent to their biological sex. They accused educational chiefs of compromising their rights and putting female students at risk during the demonstration last week. The policy was proposed by local father Tim Jagger, who said his daughter had become distressed after encountering a transgender student in the bathroom. Yeah, and here's a student holding a sign that says respect girls' rights. However, neither Jagger nor his daughter could be sure the person she met was a biological male, according to 6ABC. Interesting. But it feels like it was, since they've passed this policy or they've refused to accept this new proposed policy. Board members voted against the bathroom ban last Monday, sparking fury among some parents and students. High schooler John Ott, who organized the walkout, told Fox News that female students were upset they didn't want men in their bathroom. His mother, Stephanie Ott, added, "This is about protecting our children and our privacy, and boys and girls. It's simple biology." Meanwhile, fellow student Victoria Rudolph also told the outlet there needs to be some changes. It's just uncomfortable seeing 19-year-old men or 18-year-old men in the bathroom. So it sounds like this is something that she's run into as well. And this is the superintendent, Barbara Russell. But Superintendent Dr. Barbara Russell, highly educated as always, defended the decision not to adopt the ban, citing Policy 103, an anti-discrimination code which states gender identity is a protected class. The board also previously heard fears from current and former trans students about bullying in restrooms, including one student too afraid to go during the school day. The student told WFMZ, "I hate that I have to feel scared in a place that promotes supportiveness for kids." The school board serves 5,100 high school, middle, elementary, and kindergarten students. The school board's president, Jason Saylor, said, "Although I voted differently than the majority of the board, as board president, I respect the outcome of the vote and those who voted against expediting the policy. I also appreciate our student body, those who came to our previous board meeting to vote, and the 300-plus students who used their First Amendment right to voice their opinion in favor of the policy during their protest on Friday." So it sounds like whatever's happening here, at least they are respecting, students' First Amendment rights. They're respecting what they have to say. They may not be listening to them, but what happens next will be up to them now that the ball is kind of in their court. And it looks like they are taking the appropriate steps. And I have to say that I'm kind of inspired by these young men who are standing up for the rights of women and girls as far as this goes. So let's take a look at some of our Our dear leader's foibles are coming to be put on display. Republicans to hold first Joe Biden impeachment inquiry hearing next Thursday. Republicans plan to subpoena son Hunter's and brother James's bank records. That's going to be fun. Last week, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy opened an impeachment inquiry into President Biden and his alleged connections to Hunter's business dealings. House Republicans will hold their first hearing on the impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden next Thursday and plan to subpoena the president's son Hunter and brother James' bank records. The GOP has accused Biden of corruption and abuse of power over his alleged links to Hunter's foreign business deals while he was the vice president. That's right. This is influence peddling to the highest order. They hope the new records will shed more light on the Biden family finances and help the next stage of the investigation. We will see what happens, but I'm willing to bet that it does, because I think that there's a lot there to uncover. Let's see. Republicans say bank records show the Biden family and associates raked in more than $20 million from China, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Romania. And you know what? I was just looking up the other day, how much is Joe Biden? It's hard with one hand. He's worth a lot of money. He's worth millions and millions of dollars, right? He once described himself as the poorest man in Congress. Yeah, I remember. How Joe Biden amassed a $10 million fortune. I wonder. That's interesting. White House, when Joe Biden became the vice president in 2008, his net worth was just under $4 million. We're not going to use that site, though, because, yeah, millionaire, town and country. Let's see here. He may be known by some by the nickname Middle Class Joe, but former vice president and current president is actually a millionaire many times over. I wonder where that came from, don't you? I'm really curious. At the start of his 2020 presidential campaign, he released his financial information disclosures as well as state and federal income tax returns for 2016, 2017, and 2018. And based on these forms, Forbes estimated that he has a net worth of $9 million. So I noticed that he only released these financial records from the years that he wasn't vice president. So I would be really curious to see the records from when he was vice president, because I don't know if you guys recall a little article called Biden Inc. from Time magazine that was explaining how the whole family has been inexplicably heavily enriched by Joe's role in the government. That's a good article, and I think I'll drop the link in the description if I remember to do so. I probably won't. In May of 2021, the White House also released Biden's 2020 tax returns. Per CNN, the Bidens filed their tax return jointly, reported federal adjusted gross income of $607,000 and owed $157,000 in federal income tax. Sure. According to the first family 1040 form, they paid $162,000 and received a refund of $4,000. Their 2020 effective federal income tax rate is 25.9%. I don't believe it. I do not believe it. Yes, he's made all his money off book deals and speaking engagements. Of course. Of course. Jared says, how much do you guys want to bet that many other government officials and politicians, active and retired, would also be implicated in these exact corruption schemes should the investigations dig much deeper? Some of them, yes, absolutely. Some of them, like Nancy Pelosi, are insanely wealthy off of what's very clearly forms of insider trading, and we see it all the time. And you actually see this from both parties. In fact, one of the big bipartisan issues that I've seen lately has been that there have been, Congress people and senators who are pushing to ban the idea of insider trading for them. And it's like, duh, of course. How is this even a thing? And yet, for some reason, we can never squeeze it through because both parties are in on it. Now, Joe Biden, I think, is a little bit special. He's a little bit special case because he did do so much work with overseas, with foreign countries. And he clearly, very clearly, we have him on record from 2018 talking about how, son of a gun, the guy got fired, right? We all know this. We're all familiar with the video. But it is true that he was using all of his influence to make all this stuff happen, and he was using his son Hunter as their go-between, which I just find honestly disgusting, especially because, as these people are constantly crying about now, Hunter Biden was an addict. Like, he had serious issues, but Joe didn't care. He was enabling his son's addiction because his son was helping him bring in a bunch of money. So, really disgusting stuff. I have so much disdain for Joe Biden and his behaviors. That whole family is revoltingly slimy. Like, I'm just offended by the fact that this person's in office. But let's continue a little bit more. The White House insists Republicans have no evidence to back up their claims and have called the investigation a sham. Okay, then you shouldn't mind disclosing Joe Biden's banking records, right? In fact, yeah, I agree with Jared. I think that everybody should have to disclose their bank records, their financial records, and all that other stuff. Serengo says, what? No, Nancy and her husband are just really lucky with the stock picks. No corruption at all. Yeah, I don't know if you guys remember this, but there was a Twitter account, X, formerly known as Twitter, blah, 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 that used to be Nancy Pelosi's, stock market picks. And I think they got shut down because they would just follow what she would do with the stock market. And you get a lot of money back if you do what Nancy Pelosi does, which is crazy to me. I'm like, why is this allowed to happen? What are we allowing here? You get what you allow. This is something apparently that we're all fine with, but here we are. On Tuesday, the West Wing upped its attacks and claimed the Republican plan is to declare guilt first, figure out evidence later. We will talk about that when it comes to Russell Brand here in a minute. White House spokesperson for Oversight and Investigations, Ian Sams, called the hearing a political stunt days before an anticipated government shutdown in a statement Tuesday. Extreme House Republicans are already telegraphing their plans to try to distract from their own chaotic inability to govern and the impacts of it on the country, he said. He accused Republicans of being more focused on the baseless personal attacks on President Biden than on governing the country. I would like to do both, right? I would like to govern the country and also figure out what the heck's going on with the Biden family. That'd be great. And I feel like we should be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. We'll see. A House Oversight Committee spokesman confirmed the first hearing on September 28th to Daily Mail. House Oversight Committee will hold its first hearing on the impeachment inquiry next Thursday. The hearing will focus on constitutional and legal questions surrounding the president's involvement in corruption and abuse of public office. I think there's a very clear case to be made that he did both of those things. The committee also intends to subpoena Hunter and James Biden's personal Excuse me. I cannot. I'll get to talking and then for whatever reason I'm triggered to yawn, and it's so frustrating because if you are yawning, there's nothing you can do about it. You're going with it. The Oversight Committee will continue to follow the evidence and money trail to provide a transparency and accountability that Americans demand from their government. Do they, though? I do think that we should demand it from all our politicians if we're going to demand it from Joe Biden. I think that's fair. Jared adds, Joe and Hunter might happen to be the dumbest of the dumb, just happen to have been caught with a lot of direct evidence and their own testimonies compared to those veterans smart enough to cover their tracks. Right. One of the things I've been saying for a while now is that, holy cow, we are so lucky that Hunter Biden was in on this because he has a huge mouth and he doesn't seem to mind putting these conversations into text form. And I don't know if you guys have, hopefully you guys have never tangled with law in any way or lawyerings of any kind, but you should never say anything like this ever in any form of text communication because that is a paper trail that they can use to come after you. If you're going to make threats, if you're going to call names, if you're going to take pot shots, if you're going to try to exert your power and wield your power and do power brokering, you need to do it over the phone. And you need to avoid people like Hunter's pal who came out and said, yeah, actually, Joe Biden did get on the phone and all this other stuff. And he knew about it and he saw it happening. Oh, no, I made Serenko yawn. My apologies. Welcome in, Texas Rangers. Happy to have you guys. I'm glad the students stood up against the insanity. Yes, I am too. I hope that continues. A Delaware grand jury returned just 3 charges against him, including 2 counts of false statements on his gun forms and 1 of possessing a firearm while addicted to illicit drugs. The prosecution is being led by Special Counsel U.S. Attorney David Weiss, who's also investigating Hunter for tax crimes connected to his foreign business dealings. And that whole thing is incredibly complex and confusing, and David Weiss should definitely not be in charge of both of them at the same time. It is a shattering blow for President Joe Biden, who has stood by his son and is running for re-election in 2024. Biden is said to be worried he might die before Hunter's legal issues are resolved and thinks they could get even worse. Yes, Joe. That's what happens when your son is an addict, and instead of trying to help him fix his issues, you enable him so that he can do dirty political stunts for you. That's revolting. And now you might actually die before his legal woes are resolved, and you are to blame for this. Autumn Leaf says, hi, everyone. I'm woke. And then says, take Hunter's guns. I don't think Hunter has any guns at this point, but I guess I don't really know. The problem with his gun was that it was left in a trash can near a school, which obviously is really not a good place for it to be. And also, as they said, it was purchased under false pretenses, which I personally don't care. I happen to think that Hunter Biden deserves Second Amendment rights just like everyone else. I tend to think that felons deserve the right to own guns too, just like everybody does. But I also know that if you're going to give felons the ability to own guns, you should make sure, darn sure, that everybody else owns guns too, so that they can defend themselves. The maximum time in prison would be 25 years total if he's convicted on all counts, although federal sentences are usually less than the maximum. Hunter could also be slapped with a maximum $250,000 fine and 3 years probation. Now, two things here. I was told that Hunter Biden, because he was just negotiating with his baby mama, the mama of Navy, I don't know if you remember the 7th Biden grandchild that Joe Biden has refused to accept as one of his own grandkids. He didn't have any money for that, but he does have money to sue the IRS because he thinks that they illicitly gave information about his tax forms to the Republicans. From my understanding, though, they were required to do so. I think that was subpoenaed out of them. Judge Mary Ellen Noriega questioned the diversion agreement of Hunter's plea deal, a cause that gave him blanket immunity from a wide range of other potential charges, including illegal foreign lobbying, killing the deal. I'm glad she noticed that, aren't you? Because what they were asking for was, okay, we're done with this, but also we're done with everything else, and there's no way that anyone should ever ask him about this one specific other thing that no one's ever talked about yet. We just want to make sure that no one's going to talk to Hunter Biden about, for example, the FARA Act. I forget what it's called, but it's about foreign agents registration, right? And that's something that a capacity that Hunter was acting as a liaison for his dad. And then they just wanted to make sure that no one would ever get him in trouble for that. And the judge was like, wait a second, that's weird. Huh. Hunter's legal team sued IRS whistleblower Shapley and Ziegler yesterday, alleging they illegally made his tax information public. The president's son is seeking all the documents involving the disclosure of his tax information, $1,000 for each unauthorized disclosure, and attorney's fees. And we'll see what happens with that. I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. Excuse me. The collapse of Hunter Biden's original plea deal also presented more problems for his father, Joe. As part of the GOP-led probe, they spoke with Hunter's ex-business partner, Devin Archer. Oh my gosh. I'm just doing really great over here. Devin Archer, who testified that President Biden was in fact aware of his son's dealings and sat in on at least 20 calls and multiple dinners with his son's business partners. Additionally, Republicans have uncovered over a dozen shell companies that Hunter and at least 12 members of the Biden family used to funnel the foreign money. Yes, the whole family was in on it. Isn't that interesting? I think that kind of makes the Biden case a little bit exceptional because as far as I know, no other families are this much invested in what the politicians do, right? None of the other families, Nancy Pelosi's family is not in on it. Although from my understanding, her son Paul is a little bit like Hunter Biden, although he's not addicted to drugs. But he is similarly very much involved in the family political landscape. Thank you guys for saying bless you. I appreciate that. St. Miles says good luck on Hunter's civil suit. Yeah, so the New York Post points out Biden fears he might die before Hunter's legal woes are resolved. That's what kind of a position, what kind of person puts themselves in a position like that and then plays it up for sympathy? Bro, nobody put you in this position except you. This is your fault. And to some degree, I kind of feel bad for you because you're coming up on the end of your life and all of your failures in life are coming up right along with you and you're running out of time. And I can't feel bad for you because you did this to yourself, you know? And I have that modicum of human, compassion, but at the same time, it's like, dude, why should I feel bad for you? You've done nothing to earn my empathy. Anyway, President Biden knows father time is coming. The 80-year-old commander-in-chief fears he won't live to see the end of his son Hunter's legal jeopardy. NBC News reported over the weekend, days after the 53-year-old was indicted in Delaware on federal gun charges. The President and First Lady Jill Biden are resigned to the fact that Hunter's legal problems will likely worsen in the months ahead, according to the outlet, with a source close to the family saying Joe Biden had lamented out loud that he might be dead before his son's case would be resolved. Yeah. Especially if he does get the full length of time. If he gets 25 years in jail, I don't think he's going to see jail time, but if he got 25 years in jail, his dad would certainly be gone by the time he was out. Which, good job. Maybe you shouldn't have enabled your crack addict son and put him in a position where he's taking on all of these ridiculous responsibilities for your family. We have in text message Hunter texting his daughter saying, hopefully dad won't put all this responsibility on you. Hopefully you won't be forced to pay him half your monthly income, etc. That's crazy to me. It sounds just like a deal where dad's like, we're going to make a bunch of money. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to be my go-between because I can't do all this stuff myself. And in return, you'll be able to keep a chunk of this stuff. Autumn Leaves says, politics aside, no man wants a criminal son. Yes, but Joe made his son a criminal, which blows my mind. Like, what? How bad of a person do you have to be to put not just yourself, but your child in danger like that? Like, that's such a tough position for anyone to be in. Like, morality aside, you have to think about how your child is going to be under pressure because of what you're telling them to do. Anyway, the President and First Lady Jill Biden are resigned to the fact that Hunter's legal problems will likely worsen in the months ahead, with a source close to the family saying Joe has lamented out loud, right. Other reports have highlighted Biden's near fanatical devotion to his only surviving son, his refusal to countenance any advice to distance himself from Hunter as he gears up for a re-election campaign. Everybody walks on eggshells in the West Wing, NBC News quoted one source as saying on the topic. Hunter Biden has faced years-long investigation into dodging his income taxes, potential violations of federal lobbying acts, a gun purchase made while he was addicted to crack cocaine, and other possible crimes related to his foreign business dealings, all of which has reportedly taken a toll on his powerful relatives. Yeah, this is called an entangling alliance. This is what George Washington was referring to broadly when he was talking about making all these deals with other countries. But when you get your whole family in on this, maybe Joe really is not the brightest bulb, but the more people you get involved in something, the harder it is to keep something a secret. And I think that's part of the reason he won't separate himself from Hunter, right? He knows that Hunter has the keys to his downfall, and he refuses to throw him under the bus because he knows what Hunter could do. Jared says, you have to wonder, was Beau Biden just as bad as the rest of them while he was alive? I don't know. I will say, because he wasn't addicted to anything, he probably would have been harder to manipulate, and his dad probably wouldn't have been able to force him to do the things that he was able to force Hunter to do. He probably was able to force Hunter to do some of this stuff because he knew he was addicted to cocaine, which just grosses me out on so many levels. As somebody who's a parent and who will be raising a child before too long, it's like, how could you? How could you do that to your kid? How could you put yourself before your own child? I can't imagine. But I guess when you see the chance for power, see the opportunity, and you are a horrible, evil, despicable, disgusting piece of scum of a human being, you will take that advantage, take that opportunity, and use it for your own advantage, no matter how gross that makes you. Every day, this president wakes up and thinks about his deceased son, Beau, and probably cries every day, and the weight of Hunter's legal troubles is equally emotionally taxing. Former Jill Biden press secretary Mike LaRosa told NBC, adding that the Bidens are extremely protective of Hunter. Yes, because Hunter holds the keys, as I said, to their downfall. This is not a matter of protecting the son. This is a matter of protecting their own tails, and you will never convince me otherwise. Autumn says, Bo was a serviceman in the military. We should all be proud of him. Absolutely. As far as I know, he didn't really do anything wrong. I feel bad that he ended up dying. I truly do feel that the better son died in this instance. Hunter could face additional criminal cases in D.C. and Los Angeles for tax fraud, and illegal foreign lobbying. Right. So he is cooked 6 ways from Sunday if he's not careful, but I still believe that the Bidens are so fiercely protective of him because they know that he could sell them all upstream and end everything for them. But we will have to see what happens. So that is one example of legal troubles for 2024's candidates. And we have more because we are a nation led apparently by a bunch of criminals. Alan Dershowitz reveals why he does not think Trump ruined his defense by admitting it was, quote, his decision to try to overturn the election, despite legal experts saying he threw his case under a freight train. Now, this was interesting because in the interview with, I think, Kristen Welker, Joe, the people we just talked about, Donald Trump came out and was talking about actually he was the person who was behind, he was the brains behind pushing people to continue to pursue the 2020 election narrative. So let's read a little bit more. Trump got grilled on Meet the Press on whether he was calling the shots. Said he listened to some people, but also said overturn effort, quote, was my decision. Legal experts say he undermined top defense, that he was acting on legal advice. Right. That was his excuse, right? He was told, that he probably shouldn't do that, or like he recognized that he shouldn't say that, but he did anyway, and I'm not sure why. I have no idea what he was thinking exactly. Legal expert Alan Dershowitz said Donald Trump did not scuttle a potential legal defense when he declared on Meet the Press that it was my decision to push the overturn of the 2020 election. Some legal scholars said Trump let his ego get in the way of a promising courtroom defense when he got grilled on NBC about his legal predicament. Yes, I have to wonder, why is he being allowed to speak on this stuff? I cannot imagine being Donald Trump's lawyers. You need to encourage your client to not say words with their mouth when they're under investigation, because they are just going to get themselves into deeper and deeper trouble because they're not lawyers, right? They're just going to talk. It's not a big deal to them. They say whatever they want, and they should be able to say whatever they want. But when you're doing a legal case, you need to be super careful. St. Miles says, actually, it is a smart move. Well, let's see what Alan Dershowitz has to say about that. New Sunday show moderator Kristen Welker supposedly repeatedly pressed Trump in an interview on whether he was calling the shots in his election overturn effort, in a scene with parallels to Hollywood where the prosecutors try to goad a witness into admitting his own agency. Right, it was pretty clear that's what she was trying to do. Dershowitz tells DailyMail.com there's no such binary choice between determinations made by a defendant and the legal advice they get. It is a defense Trump's lawyers plan to use in federal court in Washington, D.C. It's a matter of degree. It's not that humans have an on and off switch. Either it's my decision or I took my advice of my lawyer. Very often when I make a decision where the individual makes a decision, but he does it based on the advice of counsel, the former Harvard law professor said. Well, Trump should have worded that very carefully. Keeping up the analogy, he compared it to a dimmer switch and took on Harvard emeritus legal scholar Lawrence Tribe, who compared Trump's admission to a freight train smashing into his legal team before trial. Tribe trivializes and creates a reductionist view of the human mind as if it's an on-off switch. It's not. It's a dimmer, it's a continuum, and you can't both take advice from counsel and ultimately make your own choice, Alan Dershowitz said. The nature of the advice isn't what matters. With special counsel Jack Smith accusing Trump of spreading lies to undo a Democratic election, former Vice President Mike Pence's former Chief of Staff Mark Short called some of Trump's counselors crazy lawyers. And there are reports that Trump himself mocked some of their theories while in office. That's going to be interesting when it comes out over the course of this Washington, D.C. case. And I cannot emphasize enough that this is taking place in Washington, D.C. Everyone knows Donald Trump and nobody likes him. Terrible. Bree, thank you. Welcome back. Happy you're here for sure. Autumn says lawyers hate a client who won't shut up. Yes. And I see exactly why. You should listen to Ben Shapiro. If you don't, Autumn, talk about being Donald Trump's lawyer. He's like tearing his hair out because he's like, this is the worst client you could possibly have because he just says whatever the heck he wants and it makes your life so much harder. It doesn't have to be proper advice. Many people who prevail on advice of counsel, the court rules that their advice was not proper, he said. Okay, well, we'll just have to wait and see. But again, I cannot emphasize enough that this is taking place in Washington, D.C. And we all know who lives in Washington, D.C. And they're not the kind of people you want to throw a bone, right? Especially if you're trying to get a conservative leader off the hook. But we'll see. I think that Trump had a lawyer quit recently. I can't remember. Trump lawyer. Let's see when that was. 2020. That's not what I want. 3 weeks ago. Drew Findling steps down. Here's a timeline of all the Trump lawyers who have quit. Yeah, so about 3 weeks ago, a lawyer quit over, quote, irreconcilable differences. And 2 lawyers quit a day after his indictment. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so it looks like either 2 or 3 of his lawyers have recently stepped down in a move that surprises absolutely no one at all. But here we are. All right, you guys, we're going to jump right over to Elon Musk because I enjoy reading about Elon Musk. I think he's funny. Autumn says it's not Trump's fault. No self-respecting lawyer will work for him, so he has to scrape the bottom of the barrel. Well, okay, it kind of is his fault, LOL. I don't know, because having the opportunity to defend someone of Trump's importance has to have some kind of value for all kinds of lawyers, right? I don't think he should have to scrape the bottom of the barrel. And as we know, everybody deserves the right to representation, no matter how scummy we might think they are, how much we personally might dislike them. But let's read this about Elon Musk ripping Wikipedia. History is written by the victors, but not if your enemies are alive. And he had an interesting point here. Now, when I worked over at Timcast, we would talk often about Wikipedia because Tim Pool's Wikipedia page is just a cesspool of lies. It's crazy. And a lot of pages are like that. Jack Posobiec's is the same way. In fact, that gives him a hard time. He does not like that at all. In fact, if you are conservative, your Wikipedia is not going to tell the truth about you. And oftentimes, I've had a lot of people say to me, I went to tell my family about this guy, and they said, quote, well, his Wikipedia says this. And I'm just like, yeah, I guess it does, but I don't think that's true, just so you know. And then their families are like, yeah, well, it's on Wikipedia, so it must be the case, which is just disgusting. Like, there's a reason we were told in school not to ever use Wikipedia for anything. Elon Musk speaking with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu during a live-streamed event on X, formerly Twitter, adapted a well-known adage to slam Wikipedia. Both Musk and Netanyahu have come under attack from the left for years, with Netanyahu currently battling the left in Israel as he attempts to reform the judiciary so its leftist justices cannot control the Israeli government. During the event, the two discussed the topic of knowledge and encyclopedias. If you guys have not heard Ben Shapiro talk about what's going on in Israel, he's much more the authority than I am, and he breaks it down. They don't have a constitution like we do. Their judiciary gets a lot more power than ours does, and it's actually a really big problem because they really do have some very left-leaning judges there. But yeah, lawyers ruin everything, Larry declares. I think that's true to some degree. It is the world's oldest / second oldest profession, and neither one of those old ones are good. Yeah, so I've kind of read the encyclopedia out of desperation because I didn't have anything else to read. Musk said, yeah, I did too. I thought it was fun. You read the whole encyclopedia? Netanyahu, whose father, Benzion Netanyahu, was a scholar and professor of history at Cornell University, and also the editor of the Encyclopedia Hebraica, asked. Yeah, pretty much, Musk admitted. That is desperation, Netanyahu kidded him. It was, yes, I'd run out of books. I think probably it was better encyclopedia than these digital encyclopedias today, unfortunately, which are edited that don't necessarily bring out the balanced view of things, Netanyahu said. The funny thing about, say, Wikipedia is like there's an old saying, history is written by the victors, Musk said. It's like, well, yes, but not if your enemies are still alive, have a lot of time on their hands to edit Wikipedia. He's right. History is written by the people who can harness the most editors, Netanyahu replied. Yeah, I mean, whoever the losers are, they got a lot of time on their hands, so what do? Edit Wikipedia, literally, Musk said. Yeah, that's exactly it. Let's see if we can listen to this.
I read the encyclopedia out of desperation because have anything else to read.
You read the whole encyclopedia?
Yeah, pretty much. I get something that I'm not that interested in, and I'll skip past it. So, but yeah, pretty much.
That's desperation.
Well, it's desperation. No, it's just like I run out of books.
Well, we kind of read that whole quote, but yeah, this is a really interesting conversation. I didn't realize that they'd sat down in person and had this chat. They made it sound like there was like an X space where this happened, and not always are people able to sit down and talk in person when that goes on. Oh, so Ian Miles Chong points out, Wikipedia is voting on the deletion of the entry for Elon Musk's Twitter files because the editors have deemed it a nothing burger that is not notable because the media didn't give it enough coverage. These people work hand in hand with the mainstream media to shape the narrative. Autumn says, oh no, keep Elon away from Wikipedia. More like keep Wikipedia away from Elon. Because like I just said, people refer to Wikipedia first off. Google has them first on their page. It's very clearly collusion between Wikipedia and Google. Crazy. Elon points out, most of Earth, the mainstream media is biased. Wikipedia, cite mainstream media sources to confirm this claim. Wikipedia has a non-trivial left-wing bias. And then he calls somebody named Jimmy Wales, with whom I am not familiar. In July 2021, Wikipedia co-founder Larry Sanger, who we had on Timcast IRL, warned Wikipedia could no longer be trusted, saying it had become propaganda for the left-leaning establishment. Yes, in fact, let me see if that was from that show, because we had him on, I don't remember what year it was in, but we did talk about Wikipedia, and he said lots of very derogatory things about the site, and of course he was cheered on by Tim, who was having a hard time with his page at the time. So I don't know. St. Miles says hard print. Audio is not working. I know, it's super low. Sorry about that. Autumn Leaves says Jimmy Wales founded Wikipedia. Yeah, so Larry Sanger was a secondary. He was like the co-founder, one of the guys behind Wikipedia for sure. Very accurate point about the living losers becoming the editors of history. Yeah, and that's something to keep in mind. So the paradigm has shifted slightly. So you can be a winner, but be edited out of the story altogether by people who don't have your best interest in mind, who hate you and want to pretend like you were never even there, which is so interesting to me. Can you imagine if people had gone in after Genghis Khan went through all of the stuff that he did, and they just downplayed everything he did and said, and then in 20, 50, 75 years time, it was like he never existed. Adam says Elon's going to buy Wikipedia and have Ian Miles Chong edit all the articles. Oh, I hope not. We need it to be like a diverse thought. I've been complaining lately because I said I've never had less engagement on Twitter than since Elon Musk took over, which is really frustrating. But he was just crowing about how many people watched Tucker talk to Donald Trump. But views are counted so differently on Twitter than they are on YouTube. Like YouTube goes out of their way to make sure that a view is actually a view. It's like at least 30 seconds. And they're very careful about how the algorithm points you to different videos or whatever. And if the videos are dissimilar, they don't consider that an actual view. They need to be relatively connected in some way. And they just go out of their way to make sure that the views that go to these videos are actually happening. Now, with Twitter, 2 seconds when a video is covering more than 50% of your phone screen is considered a view. And that's why Tucker Carlson was able to get more views, more engagements on his conversation with Trump than there are users on Twitter, right? And nobody was talking about that. Elon Musk was just crowing about how great it was, how X is offering real competition. But he has incentive to say that, right? He has a motivation to say that because he wants advertisers to use the platform. And they won't if they can't say that there are a bunch of views. But when views are 2 seconds or sometimes less, where you're just seeing the video go by, I don't consider that a view. I don't think that's a good faith conversation, but here we are. And of course, I think he is correct about Wikipedia. He's very smart in many ways. I just have been frustrated with his management of X, formerly known as Twitter. But yeah, he has a great point about Wikipedia. All right, let's touch on some cultural stuff. This is insane, says Matt Walsh. YouTube is demonetizing all of Russell Brand's accounts based on unproven allegations made in the media. He has not even been criminally charged with anything. The precedent being set here is extremely bad. Understand what YouTube has just done. They have given the left a blueprint for demonetizing someone. 1. Accuse them of sexual assault. Doesn't matter if it's proven or not. They've opened the floodgates intentionally so. And then 2, obviously, would be to just demonetize them. Easy to go. Bye, Jared. Thank you for joining us this evening. Of course, the version of this blueprint has been around for a long time, but to my knowledge, this is the first time YouTube has actually demonetized an account based on media accusations that have nothing to do with YouTube. This is an escalation, and he is, of course, correct. I was thinking, this actually reminds me of what happened with Sargon of Akkad and Patreon. So on a different platform, he used a term in a relevant, socially acceptable context that Patreon found offensive. So Patreon closed his account. This is crazy. So your actions on different platforms and or in the real world, if you are not actually convicted of crimes, I don't know, man. I don't know. That doesn't seem like a good way to conduct business. But YouTube doesn't care. YouTube is purchased by Google, and they will never be held to account for this kind of stuff. Autumn thinks that Matt Walsh is being hyperbolic, but he's just sharing his own opinion, and I think that he happens to be correct on this count. I don't think it's good or right or fair to try people in the court of public opinion. That's not what we are supposed to be doing. That's not what this designed. That's not what this country was designed to operate like. YouTube said Tuesday Russell Brand will no longer make money from the video streaming site after several women made allegations of sexual assault against the comedian turned influencer. None of them went to the police. There was one woman who went to a follow-up center when this supposedly happened, and hers would be the strongest case against Russell Brand. And there is no statute of limitation on this stuff anywhere, I think, in the UK, but especially in the world, but I think especially in the UK. So I think that Rumble hosts Russell Brand's work. In fact, it's so funny that this came out when it did, because Andy and I were actually listening to one of his videos while we were working in our room, getting everything ready for the baby. So let's see what we got here. He has almost 6 million subscribers on, I think over 6 million. Yeah, watch on Rumble. Yeah, so they had, he and Jordan Peterson had a heated gender debate. And he talked to Jeffrey Sachs, and his headlines are so hyperbolic, they're funny. Eckhart Tolle, interesting. I have a book by Eckhart Tolle up here on my, oh, he has such crazy titles. I appreciate it though. Like, I really like Jocko Willink, and I'm glad that he's having these conversations. And he does make the case that part of the reason that he thinks they're coming after him right now is because he's running counter to the modern culture. And this stuff has happened to people like Joe Rogan. It's happened to Tucker Carlson. Pretty much anyone who actually stands up firmly against the left-leaning, the machine, the Borg, the establishment, what St. Miles would call the Matrix, what Andrew Tate would call the Matrix. They inevitably come up with all these kinds of weird, crazy accusations about them to attempt to undermine them personally. It is a very consistent pattern, and he certainly has a case that he can make there. I don't know if that's the case here. He's a very smart man. He knows what he's doing. However, he was an avowed basically sex addict. He actually went to therapy for it. He had a lot of drug problems, and I knew this about him, but had been working on himself personally for a very long time, which I thought was great. And in fact, all of these allegations are from like in excess of 10 years ago. And none of these women were coming forward willingly, which I don't understand. None of them went to the police, which again, I don't understand if this is such a big issue to you. You have to know, I just have to say, you have to know that this is one of the risks associated with living what's known as a high-risk lifestyle. And that includes the sexual side of things. It includes the drugs, it includes drinking. Anything you do that puts your physical body or your legal case at risk, like this wild and crazy sleeping around, you have to know. You have to know that there are downsides to that, and it might come back to bite you in the end. But we'll see what happens. I do not like the idea, again, as I said before, of trying people in the court of public opinion. I like to wait for all the facts to come out, which is actually one of the reasons I haven't really commented on this so far. I've had a couple days to think about it yet. I don't know. I just don't know. All I know is that they made this documentary about him. All these, a bunch of mainstream media publications came together and tried to put this together to, it looks like, take Russell Brand down. And the motivation would be clear that they are doing it because he's not in line with mainstream views, and he's telling people to think for themselves and telling people to stay free and asking a lot of questions. In fact, I'm amazed he's been monetized this whole time because he asks such sharp questions about all this stuff, which I think is great. But who knows? Who knows? Evidence could come out and he could end up being convicted, but we really don't know yet. I'm not prepared to pass judgment. All I will say is that he was Shagger of the Year 3 years in a row, and for a long time he was very much a friend of the Hollywood establishment, and they thought he was great. They had no issues with him. They thought it was funny that he slept around as much as he did. Shagger of the Year means somebody who bangs a bunch of people, and they thought it was a hilarious joke then. But now, of course, they're like clutching their pearls. It's the end of the world. Interesting, isn't it? How if you don't align with their views anymore, it kind of comes around to bite you in more ways than one. So it's not just a high-risk lifestyle, it's also the connection with the Borg and the mainstream and all the spinning and turning they can do to try to put you in the ground if you're not careful. All right, speaking of being put in the ground, this story from Christopher Rufo made me laugh a lot. A little bit of Schadenfreude. A former faculty member at Ibram Kendi's Anti-Racism Center blasts Kendi for unleashing employment violence on his fired employees and suggests that Kendi's commitment to anti-racism is cosmetic and hypocritical. Let's read this. This is going to be great. Woke on woke recrimination is rising. Kendi is the new oppressor. Boston University needs to explain how one of its premier centers ended up in this situation and how mass layoffs are, quote, anti-racist. This act of employment violence and trauma is not just about individual leaders, it's about the culture and system that allowed it to occur, and too often rewards it. Anti-racism is not a branding exercise, PR campaign, or path to self-promotion. Actually, Philippe, it is. Sorry, I hate to be the one to break it to you since you were so heavily involved in this, but it actually is all of those things. You kind of put your finger on it, which, good for you. Most people don't usually, but I digress. It's a life or death matter. Okay, hyperbolic much? Too much of higher education responded to the so-called racial reckoning with theater, therapy, and marketing masquerading as institutional commitment. Yes, that's what anti-racism is. Good for you for almost figuring it out. Wherever this has occurred, it needs to be exposed for the obscenity that it is. There is too much at stake. Those of us who believe in real anti-racism need to demand more from our colleges and universities. Institutions preaching anti-racism need to actually practice it. Fair enough. Our students are watching, and they are not fooled. To those of you laboring in institutions whose commitment to anti-racism is cosmetic and hypocritical, I see you, I hear you, I'm with you. Those of you who have been let down, betrayed, abused, or neglected, you are not alone. All right, good for you, Philippe. Let's continue. This man writes terribly. If I were his editor, I would rip this to shreds because it's crazy. There's periods all over the place. Given recent events at the BU Center for Anti-Racist Research, I have a story to tell. During my time at the center, I proposed and developed a new fellowship program called Designing Anti-Racist Curriculum. Goodbye, Whisper. Have a good evening. Come back, listen to the show when you have more time. It will be on podcast platforms tonight. We successfully launched this new program. I decided I could no longer work at the center due to mismanagement I witnessed. I was subsequently told I could no longer be part of the leadership of the fellowship I created. The excuse for this was that I was leaving the center and would be replaced by someone else. This was in spite of the fact that I had said I was willing to continue serving without a course bio or compensation. This excuse made no sense because there was already a faculty member serving on the leadership team with no affiliation with the center at all. Taking a program from the black faculty member that created it is apparently what BU considers anti-racism and diversity and inclusion. I'm sharing my story in the hopes this does not happen to someone else. Oh, I should have pulled up this article for sure. I just thought it was great. It could not be happening to nicer people. Let's read some more of the details. The Kendi critic has taken his story to the New York Times. This will be magnificent. And Philippe goes on to say, I've decided to share my story with the New York Times. We'll see how that goes. Indeed. Indeed. I'm very curious, aren't you? I personally appreciate the leftist cannibalism, and I love when they dismantle their own institutions. They're constantly talking about dismantling systems of oppression, so why not dismantle their own anti-racism programs at their own colleges? I love it. I'm happy for it. I want to see more of it, and I hope this sets a precedent that other places do it too, but we'll have to see. All right, you guys, I think I'm going to wrap it here. Thank you all very much for joining me tonight. I'm going to go. Autumn leaves. I got to stop you right there. Why haven't they gone after Joe Rogan yet with fake allegations he's bigger than most? They have. More than once, if I recall correctly. Remember the N-word they came after him for? They came after him for ivermectin. All the various Joe Rogan. I'm going to encourage you to read much more closely into what has happened with Joe Rogan because they have not let him go silently. Do you remember all the musicians who were boycotting Spotify because Joe Rogan was still on? Yeah, and nobody cared about it because Joe Rogan is, as you say, bigger than all of them. Yeah, so, no. Joe Rogan has definitely been gone after for not playing along with leftist games, but I would encourage you to read more about that for sure. Peter says my comments are being censored. No, they're not. Southeastern says, red pill me more. I'm sorry, I don't have any more red pills to give. Not tonight. I am wrapping it here. Thank you guys all so much for joining me. Wish us luck as we continue to get ready for baby. It's going to be a good time. I'm excited for the future. Very excited to meet this little one. Really, really interested to learn what their personality is. And I feel like we're ready, except for the cars. We're getting one maintained, and I'm going to get them all super, super well cleaned out, detailing, clean up the house, and do all this other stuff that moms still want to do before baby's born. But I will see you all tomorrow. Until next time, you remember what we say over here. Stay safe, stay well, stay out of Target. Until next time, bye guys.
How's it going?